A 5,000-year-old board game, carved from stone. Bone dice, worn smooth by fingers that turned to dust millennia ago. Cave walls painted not with hunts, but with dancing figures, frozen mid-laugh in torchlight. If life was a brutal, relentless fight for survival, why did our ancestors waste precious time, energy, and blood on games? To find the answer, we have to rewind, all the way back to the beginning. Long before the first city, before the first fire was tamed, play already existed. Watch a pair of wolf pups wrestle in the snow. Watch young chimpanzees chase each other through the canopy, shrieking with something that looks suspiciously like joy. Evolutionary biologists have a theory. Play isn't wasted energy, it's training. Every pounce, every tumble, every mock fight is rehearsal for coordination, for reading danger, for learning where the edges of trust and risk really are. Which means fun might be older than humanity itself. Our early ancestors, the hominins who walked the African savanna millions of years before Homo sapiens ever existed, likely played too, not because they had time to spare, because play made survival more likely. So if play began as a survival tool hidden inside instinct, one question follows us into the next chapter of this story. When did it stop being instinct and start becoming something else, entirely something human? Deep inside Hohlefels Cave in what is now southern Germany, someone knelt in the dark 40,000 years ago and did something that shouldn't make sense. They took the wing bone of a griffin vulture, hollow and fragile, and carved it into a flute. 5 precise finger holes, days of patient, careful work. In a world where the next meal was never guaranteed, where a bad hunt could mean starvation, someone chose music instead of food. Why? Because somewhere along the way, survival stopped being enough. Deep in the torchlit chambers of Lascaux and Chauvet, our ancestors painted more than bison and horses. They painted figures mid-dance, arms raised, bodies in rhythm. They smeared ochre across their own skin, turning themselves into art. This wasn't decoration, it was expression. And once humans learned to create for the sake of feeling something, the next step was inevitable, doing it together. By 3100 BCE, in the tombs of ancient Egypt, archaeologists found something strange sitting beside the mummified remains of kings. Not just gold, not just weapons, game boards. Senet, a race across 30 squares toward the afterlife, was so important that it was buried with pharaohs, painted on tomb walls, mentioned in the Book of the Dead itself. This wasn't a children's pastime. It was sacred enough to carry into eternity. Meanwhile, in Mesopotamia, the royal game of sat in royal graves, its squares inlaid with shell and lapis lazuli. Across dozens of cultures, from Rome to the Indus Valley, people rolled knuckle bones, actual sheep ankle bones, as dice, betting, laughing, competing, and in the tiny graves of children, archaeologists kept finding something heartbreaking. Carved wooden animals, painted dolls, miniature toys, placed gently beside small bodies. If games were buried with kings and children alike, fun wasn't a luxury. It was believed essential even beyond death. But soon, private play would explode into something the whole world could watch. By 776 BCE, in Olympia, Greece, fun had become sacred enough to stop wars for. City-states that were actively slaughtering each other agreed to a truce, just so athletes could compete naked in front of the gods. The Olympic Games weren't entertainment. They were worship, performed with muscle and sweat. Then Rome took that idea and weaponized it. Chariots screamed around the Circus Maximus in front of 250,000 people. Gladiators bled in the Colosseum while emperors watched from above, deciding who lived with a flick of the thumb. This wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was control. Roman poet Juvenal even had a name for it: bread and circuses. Keep the people fed, keep them entertained, and they'll never think to revolt. Fun had become a tool of empire. But strip away the Colosseums, the crowds, the politics, and something far smaller, far more personal, was happening behind closed doors. But here's what the tombs and colosseums don't tell you. Walk through the ruins of Roman marketplaces today and you'll find something etched into the stone steps' crude game boards, scratched by hand, worn smooth by restless fingers, not commissioned by emperors, made by ordinary laborers killing time on their breaks. Archaeologists have found the same thing carved into the workers' village at Deir el-Medina in Egypt, where the men who built royal tombs played games during their own lunch hour. Even on ship decks, sailors scratched boards into wood, waiting out the wind. Fun wasn't handed down from kings. It survived hardship. It refused to be optional. Which raises the real question. Why couldn't ancient life exist without it? Here's the idea that changes everything. What if fun wasn't a reward for surviving, but one of the reasons we survived at all? Anthropologists argue that shared play did something fire and tools alone couldn't. It built trust between strangers. It taught cooperation without words. Every game of chance, every shared song, every dance around a fire was quietly wiring the human brain for something extraordinary: language, alliance, community. Groups that played together stayed together. And groups that stayed together outlasted every predator, every famine, every rival tribe that couldn't. Laughter wasn't a break from survival. Laughter was the strategy. And that ancient truth never left us. It just changed shape, and it's still shaping us today. Look at your living room, a console glowing under the TV, a phone lighting up with a game notification, a speaker playing music that makes you want to move. None of it is new. The royal game of and your Friday night board game night are separated by 4,500 years and almost nothing else. Neuroscientists have found that competitive play still floods the brain with dopamine, the same neurochemical reward loop that once made a Mesopotamian noble lean forward over painted shell squares. Music still synchronizes heartbeats in a crowd, the same way it once did around a Paleolithic fire. We didn't invent fun, we inherited it. And that inheritance is about to lead us somewhere far more personal than a game board, that flute carved from a vulture's wing bone. Those dice, worn smooth by hands turned to dust. Those dancing figures on a cave wall, frozen mid-laugh for 40,000 years. Every civilization we've ever uncovered, no matter how brutal the conditions, no matter how close to starvation, still found time to play. That might be the truest signature of humanity we have, more honest than any weapon, more revealing than any tomb. So here's the question worth sitting with. 40,000 years from now, when someone digs through what's left of us, our consoles, our headsets, our virtual worlds, what will they conclude humans did for fun, and will they be right?